Fourth lecture. So in last lecture, what we have seen that uh, there was this protein from Flavobacterium echinocoides. The protein was isolated and named as FOC1 enzyme. And we have seen that it has a modular domain. That means it has N terminus which binds to the DNA, and it has C terminus that has non-specific cleavage activity. And if you remember in our last lecture, we also saw some future outlook of that lecture defines that it gave an idea to study mutated FOC1 domains. And this mutation studies will actually let us to know or understand more about the modular domains of this enzymes. So what we are going to do in this lecture, we will basically study three different articles that basically gives the mutational analysis or mutation studies of this domains, specifically domains. So let's start. So we will discuss, as I said, three articles. And the first article belonged to Chandrasekaran Group. In year 1993, he published this in as a short communication. And what he actually did here, he constructed some mutants. So he constructed two mutants as shown here. These are the primer sequences. So he constructed 41 kilodalton N-terminus mutant protein, and he also constructed 30 kilodalton N-terminus fragment or mutant protein. And for that reason, he used one single forward directed sequence or primer, or reverse directed for the 30 kd primer. So these two were actually amplified, and basically with the use of same purification method, he was able to purify these two mutant proteins. So this figure shows the SDS gel, where this is the wild type protein. This is your mutant protein of containing 41 kilodalton N-terminus domain, and this is your again 30 kilodalton N-terminus mutant protein. Now they wanted to further analyze what these mutant proteins are behaving like. So as last time we have seen, there are various ways of analysis. We'll go further with this fragment. So first of all, they actually did the trypsin analysis or trypsin digestion pattern of these two proteins. So this trypsin was digested in the, or the mutant protein 41 mutant protein were digested in the presence of um, DNA, or in the presence of, or in the absence of DNA. So trypsin digestion of 41 kilodalton protein in the presence or absence of any DNA. So what you see here, when they digested 41 kilodalton protein, this gave the fragments of around 33 kilodalton. Whereas when they digested in the presence of DNA, it resulted into 30 kilodalton fragment, and here they also have 11 kilodalton fragment, whereas in this case they receive 30 kilodalton and around 8 kilodalton fragments. So next they mapped this fragment in the trypsin map. So this is from the previous paper. I've taken this from the previous paper. This is the full length protein of FOC1. So this is the full length. And if you digest, you will get 8 kilodalton and the C terminus of 58 kilodalton. This we had already seen in last lecture. And similarly, in the presence of DNA, it resulted into 41 main kilodalton N-terminus domain. This was further digested into two parts, that is 30 kilodalton and next is 11 kilodalton. And there was one particular C-terminus domain that resulted from 25 kilodalton C-terminus domain. Now in this assay, they took the mutant. For example, this is 41 kilodalton mutant protein. So that in the absence resulted into primarily the same 8 kilodalton, and this is 33 kilodalton. And this resulted exactly similar like this. 41 is digested into 30 and 11 kilodalton. So now they wanted to check how these two fragments are behaving in different kind of analysis. So for analysis purpose, they first checked the sequence specific DNA binding properties of the mutant fragments and its mixture. For example, in lane 1, what you have here is DNA size marker. In lane 2, you have just oligomer or the substrate. So here as a substrate, they took 15 nucleotide sequence, and within this nucleotide sequence they have one site for GGATG. So this is the specific site for FOC1 protein. So this is what they had as a substrate. Now the substrate is shown here as in lane 2. When the substrate was mixed with the purified fragment of 30 kilodalton, this is the lane 3, it showed nothing here. When this substrate was mixed with the mutant protein of 41 kilodalton, it resulted in oligomer preparation, for example, protein DNA complex. Similarly, when they reconstituted, that means when 30 and 11 kilodalton fragments were combined together, one fragment and then second fragment was mixed together, and then you add your protein of interest, that means these two fragments together with the 15 mer bases, then immediately it reconstituted and resulted into this oligomer formation, complex formation is shown here. So as you can see, both 41 kilodalton N-terminus and reconstituted one, they resulted into oligomer formation or complex formation. Now, to confirm whether these two are or complex are forming only because of their proteins or their proteins are exactly binding here to the oligomer, what they did, they actually extracted these two from the gel and they ran into a SDS gel. So what you see here in lane 4 or lane 2 here is exactly the lane 4 cutted from this figure 1 and then incorporated here. So what you see here exactly they saw 41 kilodalton protein, which confirms that whatever is binding to this oligomer protein, oligomer sequences is the your protein of 41 kilodalton. Similarly, from lane 5, they could see that both 30 kilodalton as well as 11 kilodalton was shown here. Although the 11 kilodalton is not so prominent here, but they have marked here as a 11 kilodalton. So we presume that both proteins are binding or reconstituted in binding here. So that is one way of confirming that what they are seeing is exactly the same protein what they are analyzing in the complex formation. After that, they checked the sequence specific binding with the FOC1 enzyme. So how they did this assay? So what you have here, what you have here in lane 1 is your DNA size marker. This is the size marker. Then second is, if you remember the previous class, we have also discussed the plasmid TZ19R. So they took this plasmid as a substrate, as can be seen here, the intact plasmid. Then this plasmid was digested by FOC1 enzyme. So once it is digested by FOC1 enzyme, the digested fragments are shown here, 1 and 2, and there are other fragments as shown here. Now, this plasmid was in lane 4, what they did, so this plasmid PZ19R was pre-incubated with the reconstituted protein. That means both 30 and 11 kilodalton were pre-incubated with PZ19R, and after pre-incubation, they again added FOC1 wild type enzyme. So that means they wanted to check whether wild type is digesting this oligomer or this plasmid once the pre-incubated is reconstituted in the system. So that means what you see here, this is the plasmid again, the intact one. That means after reconstitution or pre-incubation of reconstituted protein, it inhibited the plasmid cleavage. So there is no cleavage of the plasmid as seen here. Similarly, they did in lane 5. So this two lanes are acting as a control. So where in lane 5, same PZ19R plasmid was digested by HINF1, and this digestion is shown here. These are the digested fragments. And now reconstituted proteins were pre-incubated with the plasmid, and after pre-incubation, on top of this, HINF1 enzyme was added, and this pre-incubation did not stop any cleavage by HINF1 enzyme. So that means you get similar fragments as you get here in lane 5, and lane 6 is exactly similar. That means there is no change by HINF1 digestion. However, in lane 4, there is a drastic difference between lane 3 and lane 4, where wild type enzyme is able to digest it, but once you incubate, pre-incubate with your reconstituted protein, that means there is no digestion. So what is happening here? That means you have one site GGATG. Once you pre-incubate with your reconstituted protein, that means it will already bind here, right? So that means once you then again incubate your FOC1 wild type enzyme, this wild type enzyme will not have any sequence specific binding site here. So this is already occupied by one protein here, so it will not bind, and that's why there is no cleavage at this lane 4. So by this assay, they clearly indicated that 30 and 11 kilodalton associate immediately to reconstitute the FOC1 recognition domain. So this was their suggestion from the experiment. Next, the affinity of wild type and mutant 41 kilodalton mutant of DNA substrate was estimated. For this, they labeled again DNA with P32, and it was titrated with increasing amount of FOC1 enzyme, wild type enzyme, or FOC1 mutant enzyme. That means 41 kilodalton. Now the protein bound to oligo as a free or as a bound form were separated on SDS gel, as can be seen here. And this data was quantified and plotted as shown in this graph. So this is the same data what they have taken from here, bound and free form, and they have plotted it here. And they find the equilibrium binding coefficient. And what they found, that for the wild type enzyme, the equilibrium constant is coming around 110 nanomolar. And for the mutant one, it was coming around 80 nanomolar. So from this experiment, they suggested that deletion of C-terminus domain, that is, there is no 25 kilodalton in this 21 mutant protein. So deletion of this portion has little or kind of no effect in binding affinities with its sequence specific binding affinity. Finally, the mode of interaction with DNA substrate was investigated, and for this they performed footprinting assays of both wild type as well as mutant proteins. And what you see here is a footprinting assays. Lane 1 is the untreated DNA. Lane 2 is the DNA substrate which was cleaved by hydroxyl radicals, and mostly in footprinting assay different types of chemicals are used to digest nucleic acids. So here hydroxyl radicals were used, and 3 and 4 are the increasing amount of FOC1 wild type enzyme, and 5 and 6 are the increasing amount of mutant 41 mutant 41 kilodalton enzyme. So these two, if you see here, there are certain regions which are protected. For example, here, if you see here, and as well as in this case. So there are certain regions, and this region corresponds exactly at the sequence specific binding site. That means you have 5' to 3' GG 8TG sequences, and they also perform the same footprinting assay on bottom strand. That means you have CC TAC sequence on the bottom strand, and here if you see again lane 3 is the increasing amount of wild type enzyme, and lane 5 and 6 are the mutant 41 kilodalton fragment. So they both show a unique place where it is protecting the site, and this corresponds to the sequence recognition site. So from this assay, they actually mapped this, that where exactly these sites are binding. So this was corresponding to GG8TG sequences, and there are 3 sites, particular sites that are protected in the top strand, and particularly 1 site that is protected in the bottom strand. And most importantly, what this shows here arrow is the cleavage site. So it cleaves around 9 to 13 base pair. So there is no protection at this site. Similarly, on the bottom strand, they found that there is no protection of nucleic acid at this site. So that depicts that there is no binding of any kind of domain or C-terminus domain, and neither in the wild type nor in the mutant type. So what they conclude from this experiment, that wild type and mutant interact only parts of recognition site, and there is no protection at the cleavage site. So with this, we are already at the conclusion of particularly this C-terminus mutant protein. They showed that there is a C-terminus mutant they generated. They showed that 41 kilodalton binds sequence specifically to the sequence specific regions. 30 kilodalton no longer bind to DNA. So this was shown already in one of the things. So there was no complex formation when 30 N-terminus domain was mixed with the oligonucleotides. And when this 30 kilodalton fragment and 11 kilodalton fragment reconstitutes to store the specificity. That means if two are mixed, then you have again the binding specificity is reused or is there. And there is no protection at the C-terminus, or there is no protection at the cleavage site. So next, there was again in the same year, there was a paper from Waugh and Sauer, David Waugh and Robert T. Sauer, and they were working in MIT. What they demonstrated in that year, same 1993, that if you have a single amino acid substitution, and this single amino acid substitution, that means point mutation, this point mutation is able to uncouple the DNA binding and the strand scission activities of FOC1 and endonucleases. So we will see this, and basically they used this aspartic acid 452 alanine and they also mutated aspartic acid 467 to alanine. So what was their reason to mutate? We will see here. So they compared the crystal structure of ECO R5 and ECO R1 bound to their respective recognition sites. So when you have this here, you can already see that this point here, black point, denotes the conserved amino acids. So you can see that proline, aspartic acid, then you have here glutamic acid, and you have lysine. These are the conserved amino acid between these two enzymes. And they found that these sequences like protein, aspartic acid, glutamic acid, and lysine, they lie very in close proximity to their cleavage sites. So that means wherever they bind to the recognition site, so that means this is the catalytic site which tries to cleave its recognition site. And these proteins or amino acids are very, very similar. So it was already shown in these two enzymes that if you mutate this acidic residues within the active sites, then these enzymes lose their cleavage activity, but their recognition site binding activity was intact. That means they are able to bind the DNA, but they are not able to cleave the DNA. So with this same hypothesis, so what I will show here are the conserved protein, proline, aspartame, and glutamic acid, as can be seen here. These are the catalytic site amino acids, and these are also marked here. And since these were highly conserved and mutating, these retains its binding activity. So with this idea, they also mutated aspartic acid uh, at 450 position and aspartic acid at 467 position, and they mutated into alanine amino acid. So if you see FOC1 also, so they also saw FOC1 sequences found reasonable match with the active site sequence of EcoR1 as well as EcoR5. So here it is having aspartic acid as well as aspartic acid at 450 position. So they mutated this, and then what they have is three different proteins. One is you have wild type, second you have a protein which will have a D450A, and third is D changed into 467 alanine. So they again carried out a footprinting assay, and what you see here is the wild type enzyme in increasing concentration. So here the oligonucleotide is not incubated with any kind of protein. So there is no protection at the recognition site, as you can see here, this place. With the increasing amount of protein, wild type protein, you see increased protection, at least at the highest concentration. You see these sites are protected. Similarly, in other experiment, here in the presence of magnesium, so they did this experiment in the presence or absence of magnesium chloride. So even in the presence of magnesium chloride, so you see a protection of recognition site, as can be seen here, whereas the cleavage site was not cleaved in the absence of magnesium. There is no cleavage site here, but you see the cleavage of this nucleotide only in the presence of magnesium chloride. Then let's see the mutant protein. So you have the increasing amount of D450A here and D467A here in the absence of magnesium chloride and in the presence of magnesium chloride. So what you have, there is always some kind of protection in the presence or in the absence of magnesium chloride at the recognition site. But the cleavage activity is absence in the absence of magnesium chloride, and the cleavage is only present in the presence of magnesium chloride, and this cleavage activity is only present in the wild type. As soon as you mutate this residue at 450 amino acid, the D aspartic acid is changed into alanine. So this cleavage site is again not, there is no cleavage at this particular site. So this clearly indicates that the catalytic domain of this protein is mutated by mutating this aspartic acid at this position, this 2 position. So now they did this assay in different format. For example, they used the top strand and they showed that it is protecting DNA and it is catalytic at this side. They also did in the top, bottom and bottom strand here, and also at the top strand here. So what they show here exactly with this kind of experiment, that just a point mutation is able to uncouple the sequence specific DNA binding site and strand cleavage activity. So this is able to uncouple the two properties of the protein. So let's check what we have known so far about the FOC1, and with this two paper, what is the main upgain or gain of the information with this paper. So we know that FOC1 is a type 2S enzyme. Then it recognizes the asymmetric sequences, that is, it recognizes GG-ATG sequences. It cleaves at the staggered DNA cuts like 9 to 13 base pairs away, and it appears to function as a monomer. But by contrast, other enzyme, type 2 enzyme, and specifically EcoR1 and EcoR5 act as a dimer. And this is what creates the hypothesis for further experiments. So the question comes here, if this FOC1 enzyme acts as a monomer, then how come it is acting or cleaving both strands? So that is the question which arises from this kind of experiment. To answer this question, they started hypothesizing, hypothesis was that this enzyme, FOC1 enzyme, might have two cleavage site. Probably this is one cleavage site and this is again second cleavage site. That means one monomer will have two active sites, and one active site is cleaving one DNA and other active site is cleaving another DNA. But what they should see, if this is the case, for example, if this is the case and in their assay they have already mutated one active site. For example, they mutated D450 and D467, which belongs to an active site. So if they are mutating one, so that means one part is mutated, but the other active site should be intact. And if this is the case and this is the way it is cleaving the double-stranded DNA into staggered cut, then at least one strand should be intact, because this is not cleaved by the active site, one active site, and the other strand DNA should have at least a nick, because the other active site is already present. So they should at least cut here, and in their experiment they did not find any such cases. So they did not find any nicked DNA. So they ruled out the possibility of having two active sites in one monomer. This was ruled out. Then the second hypothesis they provided, that single molecule, let me erase it. So they proposed that single active site should have a one active site only, and this one active site should be used twice. For example, if one time it cuts one DNA and then it is sometime going in some kind of conformation change and it is coming and cutting second time of the deviate. But proposition of single molecule having single active site has different caveats. For example, first, if you have a mutation or point mutation that can lead into global conformational change. So if this is the case, then the whole protein orientation is changed, and therefore the active site is not remaining the similar, and you will not be able to find the what exactly is the active site. But from their experiment, they ruled out this possibility of having globular conformation change. Why? Because first, the proteins were expressed properly, expression was fine. And second, the trypsin digestion, what they did from the wild type as well as the mutant ones, they showed almost similar kind of digestion pattern. So they believe that there is not drastic change in the conformation of the protein. So second caveat is, what if there is an obligatory order of stranded cleavage? That means, let me write it. Obligatory order of strand cleavage. That means one will happen, then only the second instance will happen. And what if this mutation, what they have done here, this point mutation has affected the first step? That means if the first step is affected, that means first cleavage is blocked, then the second cleavage is also not seen. That means they are not able to see any nicked formation because there is first cleavage is already blocked. So if this is the case, then they will not be able to support this idea of having one active site only. So in order to test this and to rule out this possibility of having obligatory order of strand cleavage, what they started working on different kind of substrate. So what they have here is one substrate where they have already nicked at one position, cleavage position, and the other strand is intact. And similarly, here the top strand is intact, but you have a nick at second, but you have a nick at a second strand. So when this kind of substrate was used, so wild type was able to cleave both strands. So this was able to keep both strands, but the mutant using on these kind of substrate were not able to cleave anything. It was not cleaving any of the substrate, meaning that they have the similar, that means their active site or the cleavage site is mutated. And because of this reason, they actually propose the hypothesis of having monomer, proposing having one active site. Also, to rule out the possibility, they also prepared different kind of substrate because this FOC1 enzyme or cleavage site is breaking the phosphodiester bond. So they prepared a phosphodiester bond where the thiol site was incorporated. For example, this is a site here. So you have P, you have O, and then this is 3' site is attached. Here one sugar is there, just I'm writing here sugar, and there's CH2, and again sugar is attached. So by creating such site, so by creating such site in one or the other strand, so here is thiol is there and here phosphodiester bond is there. So wild type was able to cleave here, but thiol site was not cleaved by the wild type. So they have not shown this pictures in the paper, in the article, but they have mentioned that in their discussion part. So by doing this kind of assays, and in fact, when these kind of substrate was used by the mutant, again mutant was not able to cleave any of this substrate. So by using this kind of substrate, they ruled out the possibility of having uh, two active sites, and they proposed the hypothesis for single molecule of having one active site. And also, since they had also done the mutational analysis, which shows only one catalytic center. So this was the reason for them to properly push for one active site. Now the question was how monomeric FOC1 enzyme is able to, or monomeric FOC1 enzyme with single catalytic center is able to cleave both strands of DNA. Now their hypothesis started to work, and they feel that either it is a monomeric, it is catalyzing one or cleaving one strand, and then it is moving to another position and probably cleaving second strand. So this is one hypothesis, but for that one has to really orient itself, or this protein needs to orient itself and then cleave the second side. And the second hypothesis was having, you know, multimeric forms of proteins. For example, one form is here and it is cleaved, or it is organized by the another FOC1 enzyme which comes and which cleaves another strand. So one strand is cleaved by one protein and another strand is cleaved by another protein. But at that time there was no such information about having multimeric proteins coming together and cleaving the DNA strands. So this question pertinates or nucleated from this article, that how a monomeric FOC1 enzyme cleaves both strands of DNA. Now coming to our third article. So in subsequent year, again Chandrasekaran group extended his work on FOC1 enzyme, and this time actually he worked a lot on the linker region. And this linker region, if you see, I have prepared. So in this, if you believe this is one domain, probably the N terminus, and if this is the C terminus, which has the cleavage activity, so probably you can say that this part can be called as a linker. So they worked on the linker domains or linker regions at the junction of DNA binding and cleavage domain. And what they did, they made several insertions and deletion mutants and compared with the wild type enzyme. The insertion mutants cleave predominantly one nucleotide further away from the recognition site on both strands of DNA. That means instead of 9 to 13 base pair cleavage, after their mutation analysis, after their insertion, this FOC1 enzyme cleavage site was changed to 10 to 14 base pair cleavage. And they also say that the DNA binding and cleavage domains of FOC1 appears to be linked by relatively malleable linker. That means the linker can be small, can be big, and they have literally not much effect on the site. And there is no simple relationship exist between the linker length and the distance of the cut site. So there is no linear proportion. Like if you increase the linker by 3 amino acid, then the cleavage will happen 3 nucleic acid after downstream. So this was not the relationship. So they found completely different kind of relationship. And these are some of the linkers I have shown here. So they also did deletion assays where 4 or 7 amino acids are mutated from this whole linker sites. And apart from that, they have added 4, 8, 12, 19, 23, and 18 kind of sequences. So here mainly they have added glycine, glycine, serine, glycine, glycine, highly flexible linker. And in general, in nature, what they have found, these two different kinds of linker, KSEL and EEEK kind of linker were present. So basically by this kind of addition of linker, They showed that they are able to purify these all enzymes when linkers are attached. These are all purification steps. And when they purify this enzyme in the nucleic acid studies or the cleavage study, these enzymes were able to cleave the plasmids also. For example, this is PZ19R plasmid, and when it is incubated with wild type FOC1 enzyme, it is cleaved here. And then similarly, the other linker addition. So these are all different kinds of linkers are added. You also see this whole plasmids were cleaved appropriately, although there is something left over here at this position. So they showed that adding linker will not drastically reduce its efficiency of cleavage site. And following this experiment, they also performed footprinting assay, and they showed that the site of protection is changed from 9 to 13 to little one base pair downstream, that is 10 and 14. So this was a complete story of mutation from my side, and I'm already at the conclusion of lecture 4. That means in first paper or in second paper, we saw that there is an uncoupling of the recognition and cleavage site by the incorporation of just point mutation at D450 and D467 position alanine, and the domains that protect the recognition site, these mutants are able to protect the recognition site. Now the study tells us that you have a single catalytic center in the FOC1 enzyme, but the question remains there, like how single catalytic center is able to cleave both strands of DNA. With this, I thank you, and now it is open for questions. So let me start with Shubho Jyoti. You are present?
Yes, ma'am.
You asked me a few questions regarding FOC1 enzyme naming, and second question was why there was an oligonucleotide present, right? So FOC1 enzyme and nomenclature, I'm not sure because I have not studied the nomenclature in depth. I know that what you are asking is relevant, but at least for my point of view or for my syllabus, I think nomenclature we are not discussing. Okay, so probably you can invest some time and find out what is the reason and why FOC1 was named like this, right? Now coming to your question regarding oligonucleotide in gel mobility shift assay. So let me first download the attendance. Okay. Then second question was regarding gel mobility shift assay, right? So you asked me like why there is and there was what do you say? There was a oligonucleotide present, right? When there is a specific probe already there. That
Yes,
was your
ma'am. Yes.
question?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So sometimes what happens in gel mobility assay, you also have competitors. For example, you want to see in that experiment earlier you remember that oligo DT was used as an oligonucleotide, and on that oligo DT both N terminus was able to bind, right? 30 kilodalton was able to bind and 41 kilodalton was able to bind. That means they are binding it. But now with the gel mobility shift assay, we want to see whether it is a sequence specific binding or it is a general binder, because amino acids can bind to DNA via this phosphate bonds, or they can bind to sugar residues or phosphate residues. But if it is very specific, then it will bind to some of the bases like adenine or thymine or some of the major groove contacts will be there. So they wanted to check this, and therefore they have some competition in their essay. And I can show you by making just one gel. For example, you have one gel here, and now you have some kind of protein. For example, this is one protein, this is again one protein, and this is one protein. So if you add a oligonucleotide, so that means it is there, and it is there, and it is there. If it is not binding, then it is separately present. So if it is again one molecule is there, that is specific probe. That means P32 specific probe. That means you have a GG-ATG site for FOC1 enzyme. So if you are adding this, then only this sequence specific binding will take place. That means this protein will come and bind with this sequence specific probe, and then only you will see a retardation in mobility, and that is why you are getting a band at this position. That means it will not run till the end. It will make a some kind of auto radiograph at this position. Is it fine, or did
Yes,
you
ma'am. Yes,
understand?
ma'am. Got it, ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
so this is
Thank you.
kind of some kind of competition essays.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other question regarding today's lecture? So I will Trithankar Sen, please tell me.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Am I audible?
Good afternoon. Yes.
Okay. So my question is regarding the current slide. Over here, there are two different domains: the recognition and cleavage domain. So they aren't exactly doing the same thing, and they are just attached together. That's why they function as a unit.
Yes, you can say that this is a kind of modular domain. You can distinguish them and they will independently perform their activity.
Okay. So the cleavage domain in itself has no specificity in its cleavage activity, right?
Yes, yes,
So if I figure out a way to express only the cleavage domain and incubate it with a solution of DNA, can I get randomly cleaved DNA in some time? And is that a correct way
yes,
of imagining this?
yes. You will get a random way of cleaving. That's correct.
So I have one particular domain that can cleave DNA randomly.
Correct.
Ah, thank
And
you,
that
ma'am.
is interesting for future lectures. I will come to it.
Okay.
And that is why we started studying about POC1 enzyme.
Achha. So it will be the gel will somewhat be similar to how a apoptotic cell will look like once it's down the apoptotic path in terms of the cleavage patterns, random cleavage patterns, that is.
But apoptotic, if I am sure, it cleaves not
Around 100 base
randomly,
pairs.
but some kind of nucleosomes are present, and that is why you get fragments. Some kind of ladder, higher molecular weight ladders are there.
Acha.
So
This will be
here
even more
there is,
random.
yes, here there is not entirely random, but there is some kind of preference. If you incubate your DNA and incubate your C-terminus domain of FOC1 enzyme, then there is a preference to G site, then there is a preference to A and T and C. So in last lecture, we have seen that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other? So I have uploaded today's lecture already, and notes, as well as what else? All three papers where I have referred. So this you will find in your class material, and this time I'm not circulating it individually because I have already uploaded it here. There's one chat. What is the
Ma'am, someone has raised their hand. Vishal Bharti.
Vishal Bharti? Yes, tell me. There's something written in the chat book. You can check.
Hello.
Yes, Vishal.
Ma'am, in previous slide, you used calcium magnesium chloride as a comparison. means they used in their paper. So it might be silly to ask, but I didn't get the point why they are using magnesium chloride for the comparison.
For the comparison,
Like when we were comparing that this is the binding site, whether it will interact or not. Ma'am, you just go back to the previous slide. I will point to that.
yes. See
Yeah,
here?
yeah, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Here. Why
So
they are
it
using
is,
magnesium chloride?
yeah, I will point this out clearly. So basically, if you see, there are two differences here. The difference does not belong to the recognition site. So if you see, basically the recognition site remains similar, whether you are carrying out this experiment in the presence or in the absence of magnesium chloride, right? So for
Yes.
example, here, so for recognition binding, that means for N terminus, whether you perform this experiment in the absence of magnesium chloride or in the presence of magnesium chloride,
That,
it remains similar.
yeah, ma'am, that I got it. But the point is that why we are using magnesium chloride? That's not clear to me.
Ah, okay. Why magnesium chloride? Because
Yeah.
most of the enzyme, if you see, even the type 2 restriction enzyme, they have this cofactors. If you attended the first lecture, na, where I have shown in the terms of video that all restriction enzyme will have certain kind of cofactors.
Yes,
So
yes, ma'am.
here most of the type 2 restriction enzyme has have magnesium chloride as a cofactor
Okay.
requirement. And some
Yeah.
some enzymes they have different cofactor requirement,
Yeah, ma'am.
but here magnesium chloride is involved.
Thank you, ma'am. Now it's clear.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome. Surbhi, please
Hello,
ask your
ma'am.
question. Hello.
Ma'am, can you please repeat that shift of cleavage site part, like how that 9 and 13 cleavage site is shifting to 10 and 14? I didn't.
Okay. So I didn't explain it properly because this I went through very fast. So what they did, they used a lot of different linkers. So when you see here, can you mute your mic? There's a lot of background noise. You can switch on again and then you can again talk. So right now, what I showed here is only 2 or 3 pictures are there in that article, and I didn't wanted to go very much in detail because what they did here experiment that, for example, first one when they mutated the linker here, so here, so when they mutate the linker, this is not the wild type. For example, this is, let me change it. So the lane 3 here is basically you have -7 or minus, let me see exactly because this is lane 1, lane 2, there is no enzyme, lane 3, there is KS. So here 4 and 4. So KSEL. So this is the linker, part of the linker. So they have deleted 4 amino acid, and even after deletion of 4 amino acid that belongs to the linker domain, that still is able to cleave your plasmid DNA. You can see here. So this is able to cleave it. So that means they are saying that linker or even mutating the linker domain does not have lot of effect on the cleavage site. This is the first point they are making. Then slowly they are adding some more linker addition. For example, in lane 4, this is wild type. Then lane 5 is the tail. There is another type of linker. They have added here that also cleaves. Then they have added tail 2 times. That means 6 kind of addition plus 6 addition. So they slowly they have increased the addition 6, then they went for 19, and then finally they come to plus 23. So if you go back in this slide, so they have different kind of addition plus 4 plus 8 plus 12 19 23 and finally 8 for glycine. So when they tested all this, In this kind of situation, they found that all the linker, whether it is deleting or whether you are adding it together, so they are able to still cleave the nucleotides. So that means it is not having any effect on the cleavage domain. So this is what they wanted to say. And then when they check the what you say, proportionality, whether if you mutate, for example, it doesn't, for them it doesn't behave like this. When they add 6, so it doesn't cleave at +6 base pair downstream. So cleavage is exactly more or less similarly, but the cleavage is changed only +1 base pair domain. So this in detail I have not shown. Maybe you can have a look in the paper, and I have already uploaded. But the bottom line here is, by changing the linker, they were able to, change the cleavage site to 1 base pair. So this is what they have done in this experiment.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Vishal, you have another question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, now you just explained the process that whether you delete or add the linkers, it will cut exactly at the same position, just +1 it gets when you add too many. But so I just thought that in last lecture I asked you a question about the preferences. G is more preferred over C, over A, and then T and C were similar.
Yes.
So maybe this might be the reason that if you add, if the length of the linker somewhat changes in other enzymes somehow, then they preferred something. Maybe I
See,
don't know, but
this enzyme is little different than the normal enzyme. And as I've already depicted some kind of representation in my figure, that you have certain kind of enzyme where you have one domain, second domain, and you have a linker. But here linker is very simple. But in terms of enzyme, when you see there are also complex enzyme, this linker can be something like, you know, like this, or maybe some other, we don't know. So maybe this linker is behaving little differently, and maybe addition of more amino acid is also, what do you say, is what is the right word I'm looking for? Um, is
not significant.
not significant, or it is there, but it is not, placing this cleavage site further downstream.
So
So it
it
is
might not be
sometimes of
contributing to
folded.
its
Yes.
folded
Yes.
part. I mean,
Yes. It
yeah.
it might be folded differently, or maybe sequestered somehow. And that means it is not placing the cleavage domain further downstream of its cleavage site.
So
So only
basically,
one base pair. Yes.
okay, ma'am.
So
So basically,
basically,
this is not the answer about the preference still.
no, 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 not the answer about preference. And slowly your query will be, solved. Maybe next lecture. Wait till
Okay.
next lecture. We will
Sure.
come to its structure. Okay.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, ma'am.
I think then I think it will be much more clearer when we see the whole domains and other part.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other pressing questions? And since today's interaction, you can ask questions because I will give some time today. And problem is that all 4 days we have lectures. So, and good part is what I'm finding good part with online class, that immediately we are also interacting. If the same lecture, if you do not understand something, so you are interacting, and whatever possible from my side, I'm able to explain it. So I believe if there are no further questions, so what I will do by today evening, I will circulate a form. If you still have some questions, and go through all the materials, because till now, if you have seen, we have already covered 4 lectures, and next week again we will cover 4 more lectures. So 8 lectures will be finished by next week. So all this is pertaining to your FOC1 enzyme. So this will be clear all for in 8 lectures, or we will also start with then zinc finger nucleases, right? So, or what is zinc finger? So Yeah, with this, I thank you everyone, and let's meet on let's meet on Tuesday then. Okay.
Thank you.